Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Tim Pearce, and I'm ably accompanied by my colleague here, Daniel Kane. Just to give you a little bit of background, I work within the sales team of BTCSoftware, and my colleague Dan's involved with products development alongside some training, and he's very much involved in the spearheading of the MTD for VAT module. Before we kind of jump into the webinar, just a few points of interest. The first and most important being that it's a one-way transition. So whilst you choose to listen, you won't be able to ask direct questions throughout the course of the webinar. But there is chat functionality available to you. So if you have any questions, let us know and we'll cover the questions at the end of the seminar. Anyone that's listening to this as a recording as opposed to live, you're more than welcome to contact BTCSoftware directly as a result of having listened to the said recording. Okay, so in terms of the agenda, probably worthwhile reviewing it. I know that you would have seen the agenda as a result of having registered for the webinar. So who are we is kind of the first and most basic of questions. So I'm just going to run past some information in terms of who we are, but more importantly, how we've got to where we've got to. So I'm referring here to BTCSoftware as an entity in terms of being able to deliver MTD for VAT compliant software. That kind of very much links into becoming an accredited HMRC vendor and the MTD, the impact on your business as an agent or as a corporate entity or an individual. Once we've kind of provided some sort of backdrop in broad strokes, we'll then look at the product itself. So introducing the new MTD Hub, our solution. Then we're going to look at the road ahead. So we're going to look at the road ahead in terms of MTD for that, but also the broader spectrum. We'll then discuss some pricing in terms of pricing for both agents and also for individuals. And then that will be followed up by a question and answer session. Okay, so here is a rather nice picture, although that might be subjective, of me and Dan. I'll give you a clue as to who we may be. I'm the one that's looking very much like a bouncer who's probably forgotten to go down the gym for the last 6 months. And Dan's the much slimmer, younger model with what some would describe as strawberry blonde hair. And neither of us are in purple dresses. Okay, so that's a picture actually of the Software Excellence Awards that took place last October, whereby we won Best Tax Software, which we're very proud of. And in actual fact, it's quite apt at the moment if you're listening to this live, because next week, that's later in September 2018, if you are listening to this as a recording, we've been nominated for 4 categories in terms of best tax software. So that's something we're very proud of. So there's the motley crew, as you see them. Who are BTCSoftware? So again, if you're a customer, the likelihood is you'll know the basics, but you may not know all of the finite detail. So I'll just run over that as we see it here. So we were founded in 1999. Through a partnership between a software developer and a practicing accountant. We're fiercely independent. So what does that mean? That means that ultimately we're not governed by any outside influence. So we're not owned by a private equity firm. We're fiercely independent in that respect, which enables us to be lighter touch when it comes to creativity and development. We consider ourselves the provider of choice for SME practitioners. It's quite a bold statement, but that's borne out, we believe, through testimony in terms of our client base. We have in the region of 1,500 practices who are reliant on our software. In addition to that, we have in the region of 500 accountants in industry, or businesses is listed here. Combined, that totals around about, and this is obviously a fluid target or fluid figure, in the region of 10,000 users. So not all of those users will be accessing our software on a day-to-day basis, but in most cases the majority will be. All operations are based in Surrey, so we're situated somewhat between Staines and Woking in a town called Addlestone. And when I say all operations, I'm referring to support, development, etc. As you've already seen and we've discussed, we are the recent winners of the Software Excellence Awards for Best Tax Software 2017, and all being well, hopefully we'll be acknowledged later on in the month, in line with our 4 nominations. Okay, so let's look more at MTD and the impact that it's likely to have on your business. Now, a lot of this will be known to you, but it's worthwhile addressing it at the point of demo. Clearly, because we all know it has been a moving target. I joked about it earlier in terms of the fact that it's been delayed, but we are ready to go now. That's very much the case. So let's just kind of readdress some of the key points around the impact that it could have on your business. So first, all VAT registered businesses with a turnover above the VAT threshold of £85,000 will have to comply with the recent changes in legislation. So that's very much the headline. Businesses must keep VAT records digitally, so improving the access HMRC has to businesses' financial data. That's the crux. Reducing, hopefully, the errors currently made when businesses submit their tax returns. Now, returns must be sent via MTD compliant software. That's pretty kind of common knowledge and maybe slightly obvious. But rather than submitting paper returns at the end of the year, individuals and businesses will submit digital tax returns on a quarterly basis through an HMRC accredited software provider. Now, we would love that to be us in your particular case. We can certainly assist in that area. The idea is that this will make it easier to plan, account for and pay the tax which is owed. Interacting digitally with clients, well, what does that mean? That really, the ethos behind that is adopting a digital approach. So therefore it means that you, as a practitioner, will be able to send and receive information from HMRC directly using our software, BTCSoftware. Thus, the end goal is the streamlining of the whole process of filing returns. Tax in real time. So rather than waiting, as is the current status quo, until year-end to sort out tax affairs, again, the big picture is that paying tax will become a quarterly practice, with HMRC's intention that collection of financial data will be done in or as close to real time as is possible. A single financial account per VAT registration. So again, moving forward, by 2020, every individual taxpayer, alongside every UK business, will be able to see their key financial information in one central digital account. Okay, so it's a rather vivid picture here of someone, indeed a young child, looking stressed out. I'm not sure we own the copyrights for this particular picture, so I'll move on pretty quickly. But just bear in mind that this is how many practitioners that we speak with on a day-to-day basis feel with regards to MTD. And to be fair, it is uncharted territory. So there is that kind of automatic feeling, I would imagine, of feeling tense around change. And we fully appreciate that. We're going to come back to this picture, and hopefully at the end of the presentation, you'll see this young child's demeanour change from that of stress to that of more content, and hopefully that will fall in line with how you feel about MTD at the end of the presentation. Okay, so we collectively asked our client base and other professionals within accountancy a couple of questions. Now, the first question relates to the awareness around MTD. So the first question, very obviously, as you can see there, is, are you making tax digital MTD for VAT aware? You can see that the vast majority, 83%, are aware. And you'd wonder about the remaining 16%. That may be that they doesn't necessarily, in terms of MTD for VAT, have a direct impact on them, so it doesn't really affect them in that way. The next question being, will you require MTD software for your clients to perform their VAT returns? So you can see here that a whole 87% of accountants and accountants in practice and accountants in industry are almost certainly going to be affected either through their clients or their company individual VAT returns in the way that the revenue have decreed in terms of the mandate. So 87% will be affected, 12% won't. But that's just to give you kind of broad scope in terms of the impact that it's going to have potentially on your fellow accounting professionals. The next element really is building up a picture in terms of how we became an accredited HMRC vendor. So many of you will know that, and many of you actually on this particular presentation, or if you're listening to the recording, will be aware that we have a full suite of products. So we have a full suite of products. I referenced earlier, we've been in existence since 1999 when we started with corporation tax software, and we built up a portfolio of products to the point where we now have an integrated solution which includes year-end accounts, tax filing, and it's all wrapped around by practice management. That's an integrated database. So if anyone's of interest, or if anyone has an interest rather, if it is of interest, you're more than welcome to notify BTCSoftware directly, and we can set up a trial of what we're now calling the core product, and like the fact we now have MTD compliant software. But how did we get to be an accredited HMRC vendor? Well, obviously there's a tie-in clearly with the fact that we provide core products in terms of tax return software. And part of that tie-in enabled us to enroll in the private MTD for business beta testing program that took place in May of 2016. So that was our initial enrollment date, which feels like a lifetime ago now. I think it's probably to all parties concerned with MTD. But that was not necessarily the genesis, but that's when we enrolled in the private MTD for business beta testing. In addition to that, we've attended many workshops over the last couple of years to collaborate on MTD materials. We're in continual visitation with HMRC. By that I mean we meet with, I say we, our development team, primarily those who are spearheading MTD, meet with the guys at the revenue who are spearheading MTD from their side of the fence, so the MTD revenue team, HMRC team, both at headquarters in terms of MTD stroke HMRC headquarters, the division that stands there, and also here at BTCSoftware in the Surrey offices. HMRC pre-population API. So we're actually the first company. This is kind of a bit again of a kind of an overview of how close we work with the revenue. But we were the first company in terms of first software provider to have a working HMRC pre-pop API. Now that's due to our built-in live tester and our willingness to cooperate with the level of testing HMRC needed. So some of you, certainly those who use our self-assessment software, would have seen that over the previous tax season. MTD for business self-employment work. So we showcased a digital tax return demo. Now I'm going back a long time now. I'm actually going back to May of 2017 when we showcased the digital tax return demo at Accountex. Some of you may have attended that. For anyone who did pop by the stand, you would have seen that we were at a stage way back in May 2017 where we actually were able to provide a service that enables you to file a digital tax return. So that again gives you a bit of kind of a footnote in terms of how our product's developed, and future development plans, and the fact that we already have the skeleton for that product. MTD for business VAT, so showcase the digital VAT return demo at Accountex back in May of this year. So we have that up and running and operational. I'm sure Dan may actually allude to this when he shows the product, but we already, within the beta testing private sandpit environment that HMRC hold, have a number of our clients who are submitting MTD for VAT returns using our software. So it's already functional, and it's already available for usage through an invitation from the revenue. Okay, so this looks a little bit like a eulogy, forgive me for that. It's not meant to be. It's slides kind of demonstrating what our tool is in terms of the MTD for VAT tool, and the medium in which it's formed. So it's cloud-based technology, and what it really is the complete essence of it, the breakdown of it, is that it's a bridging tool. It's purely a bridging tool designed to move data, as we'll see shortly through Dan's demo, from spreadsheets into the relevant 9 boxes within the VAT return. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a cloud-based bridging tool. Now, the important point to mention here is because it's a cloud-based solution, it comes with all the benefits of it being cloud-based. Another important point to mention, those of our client base who have our full products on the cloud variant will actually inherit MTD for VAT as a module through your subscription. So it's not a chargeable service for those clients who are using the cloud variant of the PM software. Moving forwards, the plan will be to replicate what we have as core product in a cloud environment. So, as mentioned, we have practice management, we have tax, and we have accounts production. So moving forward, further down the line in terms of development, we will provide software as a service for that functionality. We're never going to jettison, to the best of my knowledge, the core product as desktop, because the whole idea is we're looking to provide dual option for our user base. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pass over to Dan Keane, and Dan's going to actually show now the product. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate the nice introduction at the beginning there. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan. Thank you for joining both me and Tim on the webinar this afternoon. So now to what you're really here to see, now to the star of the show. Let's look at the BTC Hub. So I'm going to tab into my BTC Hub now. And as you can see there on my screen, what we're looking at is a web browser, pure cloud-based product. So I'm going to start by logging in to the BTC Hub. Losing my login details. And if I choose the login option, we can enter into the BTC Hub. So you'll notice that we've got the new logo up at the top in the left-hand corner. We've got our options menu on the right-hand side, and then in the left-hand side, we've got our menu. So if we start off with the home page, so we're looking at our recent VAT returns. Now, it's important to mention before I explain anything further about the version that we're looking at here, it's important to mention that there will be different versions of the BTC Hub available. So the version that we're looking at this afternoon is going to be the version for accountants. So you'll see throughout the software, as you can see on my menu on the left-hand side, I've got my individual clients and my organizational clients. If you're an individual or a company submitting your MTD for VAT returns, you're obviously not going to have individual clients or organizational clients. So we will have a specific tool available for you. So if we look at our homepage, now we can see up at the top here, we've got my recent VAT returns. You can see my clients, the status of the VAT returns, the VAT number, and the VAT period as well. And then if I scroll down, you can see my recent clients. Now, these are my recent organizational clients and my recent individual clients that I've entered into the software. I can do that by choosing the Add Individual option to add an individual, or I can choose my Add Organization. I'm also able to add individuals and organizations from each of the different views. So you can see if I transition into the individual client option on the left-hand side, I've got my individual view. So from here, I can see all of my individuals, which I've entered into the software, their VAT numbers, their statuses, and then if I choose the plus option, I can add an individual from this menu here as well. And that's the same with the organizations. So if we look at the organizations, you can see I've got my client reference numbers, the organizational names, VAT numbers, statuses, and I can add in organizations into the software. Now, this version that we are looking at, albeit that it's the accountancy version, this version is actually a demo product. So the software is currently with HMRC. They're running through tests with it at the moment. We are currently waiting on a green light from the HMRC in order that we can release the software to be available. So we will see certain moments throughout the software where I'm entering in test details or test credentials, and I'll explain as we go throughout which details you'll be entering in the full version of the product. Now I'm going to come back to my VAT dashboard in a second, as we're going to create a client through here. We're going to open up the VAT return, and then we're going to import the VAT return using two different methods. So lastly, the last option I have in my main menu on the left-hand side is my VAT report, which is going to show me here a list of all my clients, the type of client they are, the VAT number, the status, and then also our periods there as well. So this is a complete view in the VAT report section. So if we move into the VAT dashboard now, so we can see two different methods in that we can enter our MTD VAT totals into the BTCHub bridging tool. Now, the two ways that I'm going to be going through today is going to be importing data from a spreadsheet and importing data from VT. So if we start off by looking at the spreadsheet, now I'm going to create a completely new client for this afternoon's webinar. I'm going to call it MTD VT, or Excel, let's call it, webinar. So I've created my client, I've chosen the name for my client. I can choose the plus option as kind of a running theme we saw there throughout the software. If I create that client, I can now pick up that client using the select client option. Once I've done that, I get my pop-up menu here saying, are we sure we want to interact with HMRC on behalf of this particular client? To which we'll say continue. And this is where I can enter in my credentials. Now, as I mentioned, I'm using test credentials in here. However, you as the accountant will be entering in your new MTD gateway IDs and passwords. I'm going to sign in using my ID and password. I have to grant authority that I'm acting on behalf of the client, and I can view the VAT information and also enter that VAT information into the software. And we open up our obligations. So you can see HMRC have only provided me with 2 obligations here. However, you will have 4 to cover your 4 quarters. You can see my first obligation for this particular client, which I've just created, has actually been fulfilled. And the second obligation is the one that we're going to be clicking open to now. So if I click open into the second obligation, you can see I've got my create VAT return, and I have my 9 VAT return totals. So how can I get my data from my spreadsheets or from VT or another bookkeeping package into this BTCHub solution? Well, the first thing to mention in line with MTD is that you cannot enter manually any figures into this VAT return that we're seeing here. Once you've imported, you've digitally transferred your data from either a spreadsheet or a bookkeeping package, you also cannot then edit the data. The data has to be digitally transferred, and then it cannot be edited once into the filing solution. So if we move into a spreadsheet now, I'm going to select my spreadsheet from the bottom here. Now I'm sure you'll have a very similar spreadsheet here, which is going to work out your VAT totals. As you can see at the bottom here, I have my 4 quarters or my 4 obligations. And it's up for me now to select this data and import from Excel into our MTD for VAT solution. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to install the add-in up at the top here. So you can see I've installed my BTCSoftware MTD add-in. Now this will be available on your version of Excel. The first thing that we can do within the add-in is we have to define the VAT range. So we have to be able to point the software to each of these different pieces of information that we're going to be taking from the Excel spreadsheet into the BTC Hub. So the way that I define my VAT range is I choose the Define VAT Range option. Now, as you can see, I've already defined the VAT range prior to the webinar. The way that I've done that is I've chosen to press the Control option. I've clicked on each of the boxes with the information that I'm looking to pick up and enter into the BTC Hub module. So as you can see here, these are each of my different selections. So once I've defined where that data is going to be picked up from, I can then choose the second option, and that's going to be the Show VAT Range option. So that is going to select the data so that we're ready to copy the MTD data and digitally transfer it. So if I choose the Copy MTD VAT Data option now, you can see we're presented there with a nice message to say that our MTD VAT data has been successfully picked up, and we can now return to the BTC Hub to complete our transfer. So if we do so by moving into my web browser and entering back into the BTC Hub, I'm going to choose my import option, select Excel from the drop-down. You can see we have our export instructions up at the top here, and it's telling us that we're importing from Excel. And if I enter my data, you can see we get a nice green box up at the top there to say that our data is valid and is ready to import into the VAT return. So once we've imported that, we can choose the OK option. Our data is then simply entered into the VAT return. And as I mentioned before, it's important to mention that we cannot then edit this data once it's been entered into the VAT return. I'm able to then save the VAT return. So we get our nice view here with our 9 totals. And if I edit the return, I can then choose the Save and Submit option to send this quarterly VAT return to HMRC. So if I select that now, you can see we get our message up at the top here to inform us that when we're submitting this VAT return, we are making a legal declaration that the information is true and complete. So I am going to use the tick box at the bottom here to confirm that I have read that legal declaration and I have authority on behalf of the client to submit the VAT return. And if I choose the OK option, we have our quarterly MTD VAT return submitted from the BTC Hub with the information being picked up from our Excel spreadsheet. Now, the way that you work on your Excel spreadsheets, as you can see, I've got my 4 sheets at the bottom here. You can keep the way that you work in terms of the way that you use your spreadsheets exactly the same. At this point, all HMRC require is these 9 totals here. So that all we're doing is we're entering an extra sheet on the end of our current spreadsheets that we have for your clients, defining the VAT range, selecting those totals, and then importing just those 9 totals into the BTC Hub, as you can see, as we have done here, and then submitting those 9 totals. Once we've done that, we can see the submission receipt using the See Submission Receipt option. And that's going to show us our correlation ID, the receipt ID, and then the specific date and time that that return has been submitted. So there we saw the import from Excel. Now, as you can see, and I'm sure you're thinking now, that is very easy, very stress-free, as we saw earlier with the picture of the young boy looking stressed. We can now see that the version that we're seeing here in terms of the BTC Hub and the method in importing our Excel data into here is very easy. The way that you work and build up your data can remain exactly the same. We're just calculating our data into those 9 boxes and simply transferring that through. So once we've done that, we can now move into and look at how we can get our data from VT into the BTC Hub. So to do that, I'm going to create a whole new client. So I'm going to use my VAT dashboard option, and I'm going to create an MTD VT client. and I'm going to choose the plus option to create my client and also select my client. And as we've done before, go through these different stages here in order to confirm that we have the authority to act on behalf of this client. Enter in my credentials. Grant authority on HMRC and enter into my obligation. So I'm going to select my open obligation again, as we have done before. And this time we're going to view a VT return. So as we know, VT aren't going to be MTD compliant. In order to submit your VAT returns, you cannot submit MTD compliant VAT returns through VT. And that is one of the reasons as well why we built the BTC Hub as a solution for those who wish to continue using VT and to be MTD compliant. So if we look at VT now, if I move into my VT option at the bottom here, now for those of you who use VT, you may recognize that I've entered into the display menu and I've gone straight into my VAT returns option here. Now I can select any of my VAT returns from the left-hand side. And what you will notice is that we have this MTD export option up at the top here. So if I select the VAT return that I'm looking to introduce into the BTC Hub, I would then choose my MTD export option. I get a nice message there to say that the VAT return totals have been picked up and that we're now ready to move into our application to submit our VAT return. So if I choose the OK option and I move back into our BTC Hub, now this time I'm going to choose the BTCSoftware option. We will have built-in APIs with other bookkeeping packages as well, where be it Sage, Xero, FreeAgent, Reckon One, just to name a few, QuickBooks as well. And if I choose the BTCSoftware option, same as we saw before, instead of importing from an Excel spreadsheet, this time we're importing from VT. And I enter my data into here. Again, we get a nice green box there to say our data is valid. And we can see our totals have been entered in. So once we choose the OK option, our totals will then populate in our VAT return. We can save our VAT return to see our 9 totals here. We can edit the return, and then save and submit using the save and submit option. So again, this time we're confirming that we've read the legal declaration. We have the authority on behalf of the client to submit the VAT return information. If we choose the OK option, we'll then be submitting our VT MTD VAT return to HMRC whilst being fully MTD compliant. The final thing to do is to select the See Submission Receipt option, which again, as I explained before, is going to show us our correlation ID, receipt ID, and the date and specific time that that particular MTD for VAT return was submitted. Okay, so you can see there we've taken a look at 2 methods of taking data from a spreadsheet and also taking data from VT. So that's going to draw a close to this afternoon's demo of the BTC Hub and our bridging tool. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much. I'm now going to pass you through to the capable hands of Tim, who's going to continue the rest of the presentation with you now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. That was good and interesting both at the same time. In terms of solution, you've seen the solution in its kind of rawest form as it stands at the moment. In terms of the road ahead, that road ahead includes additional detail around MTD for VAT. And I'm just going to cover a few apparent updates which are due very soon. So in terms, I've broken this down, as you can see actually, in terms of MTD for VAT and also MTD for business. In terms of MTD for VAT, at the moment, we are looking at 3 methods of importing from Excel. So digital import shown today. You've seen the CSV feed file and a written API allowing you to import from Excel to the Hub with a single click of a button. Also, Dan has touched on it, or he's mentioned it, to be fair, in terms of VAT imports via API links to third parties. So he's referenced a couple of other commercial software companies involved within the accounting sector who we've worked with in the past, especially in terms of our accounts production module. So in terms of taking a trial balance and importing that trial balance into our extended trial balance within accounts production. So the major players, Dan's referred to them already: Xero, QuickBooks, Sage, etc. So we're continuing to build APIs with our partners. In terms of making tax digital for business, now I've already referred to the fact that we have a module written for digital taxation. It's written, we're waiting for the green light from HMRC as to when MTD for business goes live. We showcased it at Accountex back in 2017. And then finally, moving functionality found in the practice management suite to the BTCSoftware hub, including, as an example, time and fees development. So the plan, the big picture, again, is to provide all the functionality found within the core product as it sits at the moment, in most cases, a desktop product, and provide all that functionality in a new MTD compliant hub, starting with MTD for VAT. So that's going to build up over time to include additional functionality in terms in particular of practice management, and time of fees is an obvious example of that. But there will be a lot more functionality and layers added to the hub with the development of the hub, starting with MTD for VAT. So we saw the rather sad picture of the child. We're now looking at him in a rather happier pose. Hopefully, through the demonstration, you've been put at ease in terms of the technologies out there for you to use. And in fact, our tagline at the moment is "We're ready, now you can be too." So we're ready through years of development. You now have the option to utilise what we've developed in conjunction with the revenue. For those who are live on the webinar, pre-order will be made available as early as next week, so the middle of September. For those of you who are listening to recording thereafter, it will be available as of right now. In terms of the pricing, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to show it to you in two formats. We've got essentially almost two products. The first is the professional product that relates to an accountant in practice primarily. So the accountancy version of the software is available at £250 for up to 250 VAT returns. So that's how it's priced. So that equates to, off the top of my head, around about 63 companies if they have 4 VAT returns to make throughout the course of a 12-month period. So it's sold on a 12-month license as per our other software, and that would enable a practitioner to submit on behalf of their client. If you have a requirement for greater reliance in terms of you have further numbers beyond the 250 returns, there is an option to buy in blocks of 125 at a price of £125 per block of 125 additional returns. So that's how we're pricing the product. So 250 for 250 returns, and then 125 for 125 returns thereafter the 250 returns. Okay, we then have the company product. So this is designed for individuals, and this will be referred in some cases by our clients, who would tend to be, in the most case, accountants, or for most cases accountants, but also it would be usable by our clients who are accountants in industry and are filing VAT returns on behalf of a corporate entity or as an individual. So the way that product is priced is it's priced at, well, essentially it's priced per VAT return number for 4 returns. and that's at a price of £50. Now, what's not shown on this particular graphic is if you have an obligation for monthly returns, or your preference is monthly returns. If that's the case, clearly you will need the ability to file 12 returns throughout a 12-month cycle, in which case the price would be £99. There we go. So that is the pricing associated with the product. For those of you who may have multiple options around the submitting of VAT returns through your bookkeeping products, as in most cases an agent, we would just say that the prime benefit clearly is that through the dashboard functionality, you'll be able to consolidate all your obligations, all your requirements in a single view. So our MTD for VAT Hub will provide that visibility. So that's a clear benefit as opposed to having multiple mediums to enable the VAT returns. Okay, and that leads on finally to the questions and answers section. Again, if you're watching this retrospectively, having the demo already taken place, or have the demo already taken place, then some of this material may be made available on our website. But I'm just going to run through a couple of questions and answers. For those of you who are live on the webinar, any questions, because there are a multitude of questions, just looking at the list now, any that we can't cover, we will get back to you in due course by no later than the end of play today. Okay, so I'm just, in no particular order, I'm just going to read through 3 or 4 questions that are shown to me. And again, if I don't get to your question, apologies, but we will run a report on all the questions asked and we'll get back to you, like I say, later today. Okay, so the first question that I'm reading here is from Alex, and Alex is asking if you need the core product. So by that, I guess, well, I know he's referring to accounts production, the practice management, the tax filing, to utilise the MTD for VAT. So the answer is no. It is sold as a standalone option, so you don't have to be using our full suite to use the MTD for VAT Hub. So that's a no. Now, it will be with due course that we'll move further and more functionality into the MTD for VAT Hub. So it might be something you'd like to look at or want to look at, or indeed you may even want to investigate our core product solutions. But right here, right now, you don't have to have a subscription to the core products to utilise the MTD for VAT Hub. The next question relates to pricing. So I've got Jamie, who's asked a question around pricing. So just to paraphrase, it's around the pricing. Is it 250 returns, or is that denoted by the number of clients you have? Well, that may be one and the same in some respects, but essentially the 250 returns is split across the whole entirety of your client base. So very much off the top of my head, if I divide 250 by 4, then we would come to a particular figure, around about 60 odd. And that would be the number of clients you can work with. So it's based on the number of returns you make as opposed to the number of clients that you have. Another question around the software's usage with Sage. So the answer is yes, it does work with Sage. You've obviously seen the VT example. The bottom line is that if you can extract the data onto a CSV file, even if it's an older incarnation of the bookkeeping product, then you can utilize our hub. And that would include older versions of Sage in certainly most cases. But we are, as I mentioned, also building APIs with a lot of the key players in the market, such as Xero, QuickBooks, For Agent, to name a few in terms of some of the online variants. But it doesn't need to be an online variant because ultimately you can perform an extract from most desktop bookkeeping solutions. And you've already seen the link that we have with VT. I think the main reason we showcase the link with VT today is because we are aware that quite a large number of our clients will be using VT in one or another capacity. Okay, I'm going to answer one final question. Again, all the other questions that I'm looking at the moment will be covered, and we will get back to you directly by no later than close of play today by 5:30. But the final question that I'm going to pick out relates. Okay, so it's kind of focusing on the future, essentially. Timelines. So obviously, timelines are denoted by the revenue. So I'd imagine everybody on this particular webinar has been aware that the times have been moved. There's been deferences. It's been written in sand in some cases and has been subject to change. So we've always worked on the understanding that at some stage MTD will be a thing. So it will be implemented despite some of the setbacks. So I guess the bottom line to the question is 2020 in terms of implementation date as it stands at the moment across the whole spectrum. But we know that could be subject to change. But what we do know is that MTD for VAT is the key concern at the moment, which is why we've led with MTD for VAT as opposed to MTD for Business, because that product's already been written, so that's in storage at the moment, and we're going to bring that out as and when it's applicable and we get the green light from the revenue. Okay, so again, apologies if I didn't get your question directly. We are going to get back to you. I hope you found the webinar of interest. As mentioned, the product is available for purchase if you're listening to this live from next week, from the middle of September. And all that remains for me to say is thank you, Dan, and thank you for your attendance. Goodbye.